By popular demand, Debbie Reynolds Consulting is now offering executive briefings on emerging data privacy risks and how companies can avoid them. To learn more, visit the executive briefings page on my website. Thank you. The personal views expressed by our podcast guests are their own and are not legal advice or official statements by their organizations. Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues with industry leaders around the world with information that businesses need to know now. I have a very special guest on the show, Keith Weisman. He is the head of forward deployed engineering for Jetstream. Welcome.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to see you. Happy to chat with you. You and I had had a chat before. I'm very familiar with Jetstream. We collaborate together. One of my colleagues that I have collaborated with for many years, Patrick Zeller, is part of your team now.
Yes.
And so him and I have talked recently. And so he's super fun and super nice and very, very smart and pragmatic and funny as well. But you and I were talking, and because I'm a technologist as well, I am always happy to geek out with people
Mhm.
on the technology and the technological things that they're doing. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your trajectory, and what you do. I'm very fascinated. I'm sure people will be as well, because I've never heard of anyone being the head of forward deployed engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks again for having me. So, a little bit about myself. So, I've been in the industry about 25 years at this point. Started out more on the practitioner side, focused on litigation support, internal investigations, incident response, overall data security and architecture. And the last handful of years, I've been focused on a lot of things AI security and it's all things AI, which is, as I think people are learning pretty quickly, the rabbit hole goes pretty deep, pretty fast when you think about AI and AI security and AI just overall operations and governance.
Let's explain the problem with AI. So when AI has come on the scene, and I have my thoughts about this as well, and I want your
Mhm.
thoughts. So a couple of things that AI has done, and the reason why it's transforming and causing, definitely there are benefits, but causing risks that companies aren't really thinking about, is the speed in which companies are adopting these technologies, the speed in which the technologies are changing or evolving. Like, we've never seen anything like it in that respect. And then the not only the power and capability, but also the access that companies give these tools, I think is just unprecedented. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if I were to try to almost compare it to something, I would say cloud is the closest thing. And I think that this is what we're seeing with AI right now is probably 100, 200,000 times faster, more impactful than cloud. I think that where people are struggling, there's a lot of unknown questions around what to do about AI and its proliferation because it is so impactful. It is being used by everyone. And frankly, there's so much risk around it that, I think us as an industry, we're still trying to get our arms around from a technology standpoint, from a data privacy standpoint, from a legal standpoint. Like it really is a cross business use case. And because of that, it's not just, for example, an IT problem, or it's not just a security problem. Like it really does span every aspect of an organization and of a business.
Let's talk a little bit about shadow AI. So,
Yeah,
as we know, the term shadow IT has been around for forever. And when the cloud came up, there was kind of shadow cloud stuff happening. So people were
right.
creating accounts. I've heard of stories where people were creating instances of things that they were using company data for. And then when they left the company, the data just went poof, stuff like that. But we're seeing just even more stuff from AI, because it's hard for companies to know what people are doing with AI in the enterprise. People are trying to tell people, well, don't do this or do this. But really, what companies are missing is that empirical knowledge about what's actually happening in the enterprise. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's difficult because it's so accessible. We have AI tooling on our phones. We have it on our laptops. We have it on our mobile devices, on things like iPads, Android devices. Like it is literally everywhere. It is also everywhere as a consumer. When you go to your favorite maybe fast food restaurant, and there's going to be probably aspects of AI that are happening behind the scenes that you might not even know about. So it really is everywhere. I think the reason there's been such a proliferation of it is it's very easy for people to solve problems with it. And those problems, frankly, can be extremely complex problems that someone is facing every single day. Give you a couple of examples. I was talking to someone who works in marketing, non typically a non-traditional IT function. This individual didn't have any development knowledge, but she woke up one day with this problem she's been struggling with, and she pushed it into, in this case, Claude, and Claude helped her solve it. Like wrote an application to help her solve it. And that was done really without any IT or corporate governance or oversight, without really any concern around data privacy or security. And that this individual didn't have any bad intent or malintent. She just had a problem that she'd been struggling with and her team had been struggling with for better part of a year. And she was able to solve it very, very quickly. So there's this concept that's sort of come out called citizen developer. And really what that means to me is someone, a non-developer, someone with a non-developer profile or background that is now able to go out and create applications. And the applications are functional, they work, they're real, and they solve real problems. So I think AI has, tying this back to why we've seen such a proliferation. I think when people are creative, like we know humans are creative, and when they run into a problem and they have that same problem that they can't solve, if they find a solution that's going to solve it, they may not ask for permission, right? Because it's too hard, right? To spin up a project and get a project committee and get it approved through some type of advisory board and then spend the cycles to go and do a development effort. Like that could literally be months. And if someone can literally fall out of bed and solve it in a couple hours or a couple of days, they're gonna go the path of least resistance. And that's what frankly I think AI is really providing people.
Exactly. But I think the issue is, and I want your thoughts about the risk there. And that is a lot of times with someone like citizen developer with an organization, they may not know the impact of their data use on the enterprise. So
100%.
yeah, so
100%.
it's like, okay, whose data? Like you may have someone's personal data in there, or maybe there's like company confidential trade secret information in there. So all those things, you aren't really dealing with retention periods. You're not really dealing with governance. So this is like a no governance zone, basically. So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
that's a challenge.
So 100% agree with everything you said. I think that there's legal concern, and frankly, we're still figuring that out as an industry. The courts are still figuring that out. Courts are finally starting to, I should say finally, courts are starting to rule on what the impact and concern of AI is around things like legal holds, things like copyright infringement, things like trademark leak or PII data leak. So we're all still trying to figure this out. Unfortunately, the old proverbial the genie's already out of the bottle. So we're trying to retrofit, I think, a lot of these things into what we're currently dealing with. But yes, citizen developers typically are not concerned about where is this data going to go? How is it going to be controlled? This application that I'm writing, like what user context is it going to run under? What happens? I'm the author of this application and it achieves adoption internally. What happens if I leave or if my credentials change? Or there's this whole identity component with AI that's frankly, we've always struggled with identity and access management. And frankly, this only makes it worse because now you're dealing with non-human identities as well in these agentic agents and these workflows.
I want your thoughts about this. So agentic concerns me, not that I would say don't use it, because you like you say, if someone has an idea, they have access, that they're gonna, like, do what it takes to do their job, and so that's something we always have to watch out for. But one of the things, and we've seen this a couple times in the news at least, where and this goes to identity, right? Where some people are like, okay, we'll have agents and we'll onboard them almost like an employee, but not pay them and give them access to do different things. But what we're seeing is that people are taking their own credentials and giving the agent their access. And so it's like this thing is like someone walking into the door of your company and then having all this privilege to do all these things and you don't know what they're doing. But
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I think the other consideration here too is that humans, most of us, right? Hopefully all of us, but let's be realistic, not all of us, because there's threat actors running around out there. Like we operate with a conscience and we operate under this sense of something could happen to us. Like we could lose our job, we could lose employment, we could potentially be litigated against. Like there's consequence for a human. For an agent, there's not consequence, right? It's basically been told to go do something, and its goal, its mission, its purpose in life is to accomplish that goal. And in most cases, that means no consequence because it doesn't know about those things or frankly care. Like it hasn't been, like that's not its sphere of concern. So I think that only magnifies the problem, but the agent identity problem and being able to attribute an agent to an identity or a service account or a business owner is a major, major issue right now. And again, like I said, it's one that we've struggled with really since the age of time, since the age of computer systems. And, you know, this whole agentic workflow has really only compounded it, in my opinion. It's only compounded it. It's only making it worse. It's only making it more of a problem because it's just so front and center. Again, if I can't attribute a business workflow, what do I do if, for example, God forbid, an API key is stolen or compromised or needs to be changed? Like that becomes very difficult. Most companies, in my experience, they're kind of just turning a blind eye because the risk of trying to retrofit a new API key into a critical business process is too hard and it's too risky. It's almost easier to just sort of not do anything versus try to retrofit it to try to revoke it and replace it. So it's a big problem.
and I remember just in the burgeoning days of how organizations will handle access management. Like for example, let's firm if they had an expert come in, they would give them a laptop and they would say, "Okay, you have all your documents on this laptop," but their access would be like wide open. So if they went off the path, they could have like done everything. And so I feel like that's where we are with agents, where where we're like, let's just give them like access to everything. And then we'll give them one little task to do and then hope they do that task. But, these tools have so much power and can look at so many things. So you have to really think about the the art of it, what is possible, the applications, not just what's probable.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that we've seen, and I've seen this firsthand, is take the example of let's pull on the citizen developer thread a little bit further. If I go and I develop an application, and again, it solves my problem, which is great, and it solves maybe many people's problems, which is great. The reality is, most of the time, people don't know what's actually happening, like inside of that dark room. Like we just know that something's happening and the output is great because it's solving my problem, but I don't necessarily know how we're arriving at the solution. I just know that I have a problem and my problem is being solved. I don't necessarily know what's happening inside of that dark room. So the ability to be able to go into that room, flip on the light, and actually seeing what's happening is critically important because, again, you don't know where your data is going. You don't know where it's being shared. You don't know how the solution is being solved. Is all of that being done in a manner that you as a business owner are comfortable with? And frankly, the answer to that question, unfortunately, might be no. So having
Right.
visibility into that workflow is a critical step in this overall process.
So true. So true. And we're seeing like the example I bring up recently about the gentleman who said that his AI agent deleted his database within 9 seconds or something. And it's like,
Yes.
I'm sure that was not his intent. Obviously, was trying to solve a problem. AI thought, oh, well, the easiest path to my goal is to delete this database and then I'll have
Right.
all I need. And so this is the problem that we have when you're not really thinking through the potential impacts of he was trying to solve a problem, not create one. And so a lot of times we see companies when they're trying to do this, you just need more visibility and more understanding around not only how the agents work, what is their end goal? Like, what are their parameters that they can work within?
That's right. There's another story that's it's a little funny. I mean, it's on the surface it's funny, but it's also a little scary depending on kind of how you look at it. But the story was this organization, software development shop, was actually using AI to write code, like a lot of companies are, right? What a lot of companies are doing is they're using AI to develop code and applications, and then they're doing human review of that code to make sure that it's legitimate and it's not violating any boundaries or anything that they're uncomfortable with. Well, when this process first started, this company had allowed the AI to basically push to production GitHub, and GitHub is basically a software development lifecycle part of the process, right? So they were effectively going from development to production push. And they realized pretty quickly, I believe, that, hey, we probably need to gate this thing and, again, interject human review before we push to production. So what basically happened was the AI was like, once it was guardrailed or sandboxed to just be able to do the initial code development and not push to production, it was sort of like, hey, you're now slowing me down in my overall process, in my overall mission of pushing this code from end to end. And the AI tried to circumvent the production code push, right? And when it couldn't, it started to turn to, okay, who is actually blocking me from doing this? And when it was able to figure out who that person was, it sort of went on like like a defamation campaign against this person. So it started publishing articles to the internet about how this person and this process was slowing down its job ultimately. So it kind of the AI almost went into self-defense mode because it couldn't accomplish its goal as quickly as it felt like it could before. So it's just kind of interesting that these things are, they really are almost you almost have to treat them like human beings, but they're human beings that don't need to sleep or eat or have good days or bad days. And they also, like we talked about before, they also don't have concern about human consequence or consequence that we do. So it's just kind of interesting how this kind of take on a life of its own. And like I said, a little bit funny to hear. You're smiling and it's a little bit funny to hear, but it's also a little bit scary, a little bit how a system like this can almost go into self-defense mode to try to super optimize itself. And if something gets in the way, it's going to try to problem solve. And in this case, it couldn't problem solve technically. So it tried to problem solve through like a public defamation campaign of the person that it had attributed to slowing it down. So kind of interesting, kind of funny, a little bit scary or a lot scary also though as well.
Yeah, totally. Right. Because these systems are goal oriented. And so they're not thinking about the context or the consequence of doing something outside of, they don't understand the thing that they shouldn't be doing. So
That's right.
a lot of times we say, okay, I want you to do this, but you didn't tell it what not to do. 'Cause you don't
That's
know
right.
what to tell it not to do. Right. So,
That's
oh
right.
gosh. A bit about how Jetstream helps solve some of these problems that companies have when they're trying to. There's this rapid push to adoption. There's this excitement there. But then also we have to think about those risks, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the good news is that there's, a lot of organizations, a lot of these regulatory entities, non-for-profit entities that are really trying to solve this problem. So that's it. It's not all doom and gloom. Like there is a lot of upside here. And frankly, I think, trying to look at this from a glass half full perspective, like there is a lot more value than there is, hopefully risk. We need to be thoughtful about how we're using it. So in the context of Jetstream, so we're thinking about the problem in five main, we call them AI trust gaps. And the first trust gap is really visibility. And that's just a fundamental, you come from from the data world. And, it's sort of the old, you need a data inventory, you need CMDB of your software. Like you need to know where you are using these capabilities. That would be number one, is visibility, and provide some opportunities to make that visibility, to make that CMDB for AI, frankly, a lot easier and not nearly as onerous as it could be. So that's number one. The second is what we're calling design control. And that's really akin to, I talked about this dark room where all the magic is happening. That's exactly design control. So knowing what's happening inside of the room. So going into the room, flipping on the light, figuring out where the cockroaches are, figuring out where the weak floorboards are. That's essentially design control. And again, the Jetstream solution and approach is really designed to help you get your arms around design control. The third is, once you know what you're using, what your user base is using, what your organization is using in terms of visibility, and you have a handle around how that's all being operationalized and what it's doing. The third is kind of the old fashioned, we've approved it, we know about it, we've approved it. Let's make sure it doesn't drift and change over time. So we attain a good steady foundation, because that's the other component to this. Like it can change in a millisecond, and it can change without you knowing. So it's important, once you've got your arms around it, knowing what's actually continuing to happen over time. The fourth is, we touched on some of the identity components. So we're calling this agentic identity, but it's effectively tying or attributing your AI process to an identity. And that could be a service account, it could be an individual, it could be tying and almost protecting like that API layer through the use of something that we call a virtual key, so that if a compromise does happen, threat actors don't have the actual key that they can do damage with. And then the fourth is an interesting one, and that is the finance side of this. So the financial accountability side of this. Many have seen this article that's been published, and there's actually many more, some that haven't made the news, but people burning through tokens, and then the CFO or a business unit, frankly, at the end of the month, getting a massive bill. So being able to attribute and understand how people are using AI, how it's adding business value, but also where it's being used, and what the overall cost is. There's also implications here around, some companies are starting to think about, like, do we tie spend to business units to do chargebacks? Do we have one large AI budget? Do we do something hybrid where it's a little bit in between? But this cost, because there is a cost, and I personally believe the cost in many cases is justified, but you can't answer, is it justified, unless how it's being spent, and who's spending it, and token usage, and what models are being used, and are we using the right model for the right job? Are we putting 93 octane in our car when we can run perfectly fine on 89 octane? Like, that's really an analogy that you can apply to token usage in AI. So we're trying to limit it, or sort of put it into this context of those 5 AI trust gaps, because it's a hard problem, and it's a hard problem for people to get their arms around. So we don't want to overcomplicate it. We want to put it into a model that is, or a framework, I should say, that is easy to understand and easy to manage.
Yeah. As you're talking, thinking about like agentic workflows in a way, almost like third party risk in a way, except the
Yes.
risk is internal.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think it is internal, but it's also external, because a lot has been written about, and I think we've probably all experienced it, supply chain attacks. This is really no different. If your third party suppliers are using AI, which they probably are, how does that impact your business, your availability, your cost, your predictability, all of those things? But then there's also, like you said, there's the internal side of it as well. And where are the agentic workflows? How do they hook into critical business process? Should they hook into critical business process? So yes, I think it's an internal risk, but it's also a third party, and can be supply chain risk as well if we're
Yeah.
not careful.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the reason why I was thinking about third party risk, I'm always the person that's shaking my fist at the sky when I hear someone say they had a third party breach or whatever, and then you listen to what they've done. It's like, well, why would you give them access to do that?
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
you were just hoping that they wouldn't, like, find the back door or the open door that they could just walk right through, and so now you have technology that's very aware of its capabilities and all those open doors, so, hopefully, this process will help bolster companies to be more secure internally, but then also help solve that third-party risk issue.
Yeah, DPAs become really important, and AI is certainly a very large component of that. How is AI being used? If I'm an organization, I'm sharing my data. How are you using my data? How are you training on my data? How are you protecting it? There's a lot of threads to pull on here. Internally, like we talked about, are threads to pull on in terms of legal and compliance from an internal perspective, use policies. Are users even aware? Like it is very, very, very easy for someone, a very good employee that's trying to follow the rules and follow internal policy, but to accidentally start using a public AI when they thought they were using maybe an enterprise AI. Like, candidly, I've done it. Like, I do this for a living and I've done it. I've accidentally flipped to my phone and caught myself where I was starting to ask something work related on an AI that I'm paying for through my own personal finances. So it's I guess my larger point is it's very easy for people to make mistakes, very innocent mistakes, but those mistakes can also be very, very impactful, like to an organization.
I think Patrick and I did talk a bit about internal, like, unauthorized access.
Yes.
I always call unauthorized access the cousin of data breach. So it's not a breach, but it's something that's happening with an organization that it shouldn't be happening. And I think it just complicates the data issue within companies because there's so much. I call data the fuel of organizations. And so that keeps things moving. And so we want people to be able to do their jobs and we want people to be able to achieve their goals and do things for the company, but we want to do it in a way, like you say, about bringing visibility. Also, that the context matters. I think, especially when you were talking about around the finance issue, the context of what the person is trying to do. Like, is it worth it to spend $50,000 to create this application that's going to save you 1,000?
That's right. That's
So
right.
you have to think about all those things.
Yeah, and we also don't want to get in the way though too of someone that might spend $5,000 to solve a $500,000 problem. Like I think it's almost akin to if I think about my kids are quite a bit older now, but when we first brought my daughter home and she started to walk, you run around and you try to baby proof your house. And it's like you almost need to build a safe environment so that your employees can maximize their thoughts and their creativity and their ideas because you don't want to the last thing you can do in this day and age is kind of stifle those ideas and that creativity because that's frankly where some of the best ideas are created from. But by the same token, you need to build this safe environment so that they're not using public AIs and sharing confidential data with, these foundational models. Because once you do that, it's gone. But once you put something out there into the ether, into a public AI, like it is very much gone. So it's kind of about this fine line of building this safe environment to foster creativity and good ideas, but also protecting from someone doing something that can be very, very impactful. And the good news is there are ways to do this. Like it's not, like I mentioned before, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways to do this. It's just kind of slowing down and taking a breath and stopping and thinking about what could we be doing to minimize our risk in the world of AI.
Yes, exactly. And and I want your thoughts just on the privacy implications of of AI use. So for me, sometimes I feel like people don't understand the connection. So I think of it as organizations have data of people. And when you have data of people, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, you may have obligations around transparency and also that stewardship that you're supposed to have when you're handling data.
Yeah, I think that it's about getting people to maybe stop and think before they act. And it's hard to do. Like I'll be the first to admit it. So again, I live in this world every single day and have grown up in a security background. And I catch myself sometimes being like before I hit the enter key of like, should I really be doing this? So it's a very easy trap to fall into. But I think just getting people to stop and think about, hey, before I upload this file of potentially confidential information, where am I sending it? And should I really be doing this? Or could I be formulating my prompt in a different way so I can get the same outcome, can get to arrive at the same conclusion or solve the problem that I'm trying to solve without sharing private, confidential, or potentially private and confidential information. So, and most of the time, there are ways to do that. I mean, sometimes you have to sans the data a bit, clean it up, extrapolate it so you're not sharing actual real world data, you're giving samples. But I think just kind of getting people to slow down a little bit before they act can really, really go a long way.
So, what things are you seeing either in the wild or companies are coming to you? Obviously, companies have hard problems when it comes to AI and adoption and trying to keep the trains moving within the
Yes.
organization. But what are some of those things that you're seeing now that like concern you?
Yeah, I think I'll try to answer that in maybe I think there's two questions there. One, what are we being asked about? And then what concerns me? I think it's kind of interesting because my style, my personality is more of I would rather solicit some of your feedback and then give you potential options for solution. Debbie, you came to me with this hard problem. Here's three things that you might want to consider doing. You know, A, B, C, D, E, F. Maybe there's three, four, five things versus just kind of coming out directly and saying, Debbie, I think the answer is A. Like that's generally not my style. But what I am finding when it comes to AI is people don't want options. They want a solution. Like they want, give me A. Don't give me A, B, C, D, and or E. And I think that's because people have realized how fast this train, to use your term there, is moving and how quick they need to act and react. They don't want they just want the answer. They don't want, you know, you've got three options here and these are the pros and cons. They just want give me what you think is going to get me to the best, safest, most secure place, cost effective place. So that's number one. So I frankly I've had to adjust my style a little bit in that regard to be a little bit more direct. In terms of what scares me, it's a really interesting question because it's kind of what scares me, but also what excites me. This AI train is awesome. Like it is awesome. And things that we're able to do and problems we're able to solve at the speed that we're able to solve them, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. Like I remember like my first real, I would say aha moment with AI was more from a security analyst engineer perspective around incident triage. And I saw this solution where we could basically ask it questions and we could get answers back very, very quickly and very thorough answers and very comprehensive answers. And when someone was describing this to me, I frankly didn't really believe them that it was going to be possible. And it wasn't until I actually started to use it that I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is real and it's here and it's now and it makes an impact. So that's what probably excites me the most about it is how powerful this is, but that's also what scares me and kind of scares the bejesus out of me in a lot of ways because we're on the good guy. I'll call it the good guy side. I guess it's all in your point of view, but we're on the good guy side. There's a whole other world out there that's using it for bad. So that's scary. It's also scary, even people trying to use it for good, how it could be one wrong move, how it could be like we were talking about, how it could open up an organization or a company or a person to a whole lot of pain. So I think it's a lot of excitement, but it's also a lot of like, oh my gosh, this is here and it's real and it's awesome, but it's also dangerous. It's kind of like I've got split brain going on with this whole thing because positive side of me is like, this is great. And then the other side of me, the realistic side of me is like, oh my gosh, this could be really, really scary or is really scary.
Yeah, it's like being on a roller coaster in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And sorry for the long-winded answer, but I'm kind of passionate about it because I struggle with it. I do struggle with it. I think we all are kind of struggling with it.
Oh, yeah, totally, totally. So, a lot of times I'm thinking a lot of times we have problems just in day-to-day life, and then sometimes you fall back into what you typically done, and you think, "Wait a minute, I could automate this. This is a problem I have all the time." And so, being able to look for something and just that eureka moment where you're able to solve a problem that was really hard, and it really helped you get to the finish line, it does create that excitement. And so, we want people to be excited about it. We want people to be able to use these tools, but do it in a way that doesn't harm them or harm other people. So for me,
Right.
I always think about technology as a double-edged sword that cuts both ways. So
That's right.
so you
That's
have to
right.
think about it in terms of the power of the tool, but then also the responsibility that the person has to wielding that power.
That's right. That's actually a really interesting way to think about it. Yeah, because it can be a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it's tremendous value comes from it. I mean, I think about I was working with someone a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned the DPA, and they were trying to map out their data flows and like, okay, we got this application and we don't really know what it does. Well, point a enterprise AI at it, a private AI at it, and ask it, walk the data flow and tell me what the data flow is and where there's potentially sensitive data. And literally, this person told me within about 30 minutes, they had a pretty solid and 90% of the way there data flow. I mean, let's be honest. We probably have all done that in the past, and it can be a week to 2 week to a month project to map out all the data flows. And this literally was about a 30-minute solve. Like that's pretty awesome. Again, you got to be careful and you got to be thoughtful in how you're doing it, but it's there's a real power in a lot of what we're seeing in these tools.
I think it's just only gonna continue. I think as especially as companies, they're onboarding applications really quickly. They're using internal and external tools. They're trying to train people or have them teach themselves about how to use these tools. So I think it's just getting very interesting within the enterprise. I am definitely excited about it, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm tinfoil hat exactly. I'm not exactly tinfoil hat when it comes to technology. I always tell people I'm a technologist. I love technology, but I don't love everything that people try to do with it.
That's very true.
So, if it were the world according to you and we did everything you said, what would be your wish for either technology, cyber, anything in the world, whether it be regulation, human behavior, or technology? Like, what would you want to see in terms of like AI, whether it be any of those factors?
Yeah, I think I'll answer first, maybe in the context of IT, and then I'll maybe put a slightly different spin on it as well. I think that for people to be able to do their jobs better, faster, quicker, to frankly free themselves up, because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we all work very, very hard, and it doesn't ever stop. This concept of weekends is kind of it's there, but it's kind of gone. This concept of holidays and vacation is there, but it's kind of gone. So I mean, I hope we could get to a world where it's and again, maybe I sound a little, I don't know, fairy tale-ish here when I answer this, but I don't know, maybe just a little bit more better work-life balance. And maybe I'm speaking for my own personal desires in this thing. I think the other aspect of this too, and it's probably a non-IT focused area, but I'm really interested to see what how AI continues to push, this kind of human health and the medical field. I mean, we've been very focused, purposefully so, right? This is very much an IT focused discussion, but I mean, I think, and we're already seeing it, but some of the advancements in medicine and things I think are going to be continue to be pretty mind blowing. And that's pretty exciting as well, too, just for kind of just us as a world, and people we care about and people we love that might have different, medical problems and things on some of the breakthroughs that we might see. Cause I do think we're going to continue to see them with this.
I know I always think of AI not as the marquee item, but it's the thing that allows you to do a thing.
Yes. Yes, yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can see that. You also have a background in tech as it relates to legal. I mean, you saw all the rubber bands and paper clips and all
Oh yeah,
the stuff in the background, and so being able to have that back office stuff speed up some of that the drudgery of how some of that work was done, I think it's gonna be tremendous.
absolutely. I mean, heck, even maybe it's a little bit silly of an example, but I remember my first job out of college and an internship. My first job out of college, I guess, is where I really traveled, where I had to deal with receipts, and actually taking a physical receipt and literally taping it to a piece of paper. And there was like a lot of guidelines around like if you put too many receipts on a piece of paper, it would get rejected and sent back. You're putting stuff in the mail and all this garbage. Like, I mean, just think about that, how nice it is. I travel a fair amount for work and just to be able to have a receipt and you take a picture of it and it OCRs the receipt and next thing, boom, you're getting reimbursed and it's super easy. And so, yeah, so things like that. I mean, in the legal field, gosh, it was awful. Just printing copies and everything. Yeah, it was just awful. And frankly, such a waste of time.
Terrible.
Yeah. 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 Not to like go down too far down that path, but holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank God those days are gone.
Totally, totally, yeah. There's a lot of room though in the just a lot of different industries to find ways to improve workflows or improve outcomes or speed up decisions. We're seeing people making decisions faster now because they have more real time or near real time information.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the world I'm living in now. I mean, customer feedback, customer opportunities to make things better for our customers. Like it's that data is all there. It's just are we willing to use it and look at it and take it seriously? And I I personally do. I think it's what makes us all better. And I've always felt like and this is as a manufacturer, as a producer of software, like frankly, most of the best ideas that we have in our product, probably 9 out of every 10 of the best ideas haven't come from us. Like they've come from our customers and the consumer of our software because they're the people that are in it every day. They're the ones that are in it saying like, geez, this workflow's not as good as it could be. You could shave off 5 seconds off of every review that I have to do just by mildly changing something. Those are really where the good ideas come from, in my opinion. So
It's true, and I'm glad that you all are taking that tack because the customer really feels the pain of things. So if you're getting that type of feedback, is great because you could say, and then now because of the technology, those are things. It's not like, oh, we'll put it on a roadmap, and 3 years later you may see something. So being able to do it faster, more rapidly, I think is exciting.
absolutely. I mean, look, it's pretty simple, right? Like, what would I rather do? Join a call where you're loving our product or join a call where you're angry and you're frustrated and you're yelling at me about something? Like, it's simple. Like, of course, I want to join a call where you're like, Keith, this is great. I love it versus Keith, this is awful. You need to help me. Like, it's simple. It's just a much more enjoyable experience for you and for me. So, of course, I'd like to think we would all be motivated to operate that way, right? It just seems a lot easier that way.
So thank you so much for being on the show. This is tremendous. And so if people want to get to know more about Jetstream and what you do, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, probably our website, Jetstream Security. There's a lot of different ways to contact us. I'd certainly be love to talk to as many people as possible, but just generally speaking, to reach a broad audience, the website is probably just the
Yeah,
easiest route.
it's jetstream.security.
It is. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the show again. I really appreciate it and look forward to us having more chats in the future as we collaborate together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was certainly my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. Take care.
Okay, thank you.